Hello and welcome to episode 1336 of The Sleeper and the Bust. It is Wednesday, August 28th. I'm your host, Paul Sporer, joined this morning by Justin Mason. Justin, good morning.
Good morning. How you doing?
Not too bad. Way to move the Monday episode here. We're gonna go Wednesday? We'll go Wednesday, Friday. I don't think we're gonna go tomorrow, are we? We'll
I
do
mean,
two
I
this week.
can.
We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah.
Might end up doing two this week, but had a few things that we had to rearrange around the schedule. But we're here to talk some pitchers today, and I got some fun ones for us to talk about. We do like the surging hitters, the failing hitters. We can do the surging pitchers, which we're doing. The failing pitchers are tough because, as I mentioned before, they usually end up just being injured and out of the rotation. Like if they suck so bad, they're out of the rotation. And then if they are still in the rotation and they're sucking, they're usually good enough pitchers that you're not going to do anything, right? So it's like that's why we never really do like these pitchers are struggling. What do you do? Because I don't know. I'm trying to think of a stud who's struggling right now, but for the most part, it'd be like hold unless they get kicked out of the rotation. So I like talking more about the surging pitchers because we got a few guys on here, Justin, that we have not discussed in proper detail, and they are helping people win leagues, including one of your buddies trying to make a run at the big dog. And he has one of these guys, actually has two of these guys on his team. But let's start with a couple guys in Seattle. We know their pitching's been great all year. The reason I want to give Bryce Miller and Brian Wu a little extra love though is because they don't usually get it. Even though that rotation gets a lot of hype, it usually gets targeted to Gilbert, Castillo, and Kirby for good reason, right? The two youngsters kind of making their name, Miller and Wu, but they're absolutely doing it. In fact, now he only has 16 starts, which is the lowest on the team, but Wu's 2.05 ERA is best. The other three guys are all under four. Miller's is third best behind Gilbert at 323. Both of them are on fire of late too. If Seattle could hit it all, they'd be dominating. By the way, what'd you think of the? Before I ask you about Wu and Miller specifically, what'd you think of the firing of Service?
It feels weird. I mean, I
A
know
little
there
bit,
were
right?
I know like they've had kind of an epic collapse.
Right.
It feels like why get rid of him and not get rid of Dipoto, and maybe Dipoto gets fired in the off season, but like I don't know, like I know that there were some very mixed reviews from players, especially on Scott Service as a manager. But like this doesn't feel like a managing issue. It
It
feels
really
like
doesn't.
dudes aren't hitting, and like he can only do so much. Like you're not gonna bench or send down J Rod.
No,
Like
this is fall guy behavior
yeah,
here. That it happens, but man, it's kind of tough putting it at his feet. Like, what the hell was he supposed to do? So
yeah,
I don't know. Not something we necessarily get too deep into as far as like managerial moves, but I was definitely surprised. A lot of us were like, "Whoa, okay, that's what they're going with." But anyway, as you're looking over here, basically since the All-Star break, both these guys, like I said, they've been having great years, but they've kind of been on another level. Since the break, Brian Wu's ERA is at 165 in 44 games, and Bryce Miller's is at 216. So we know they're great. We know they're all format starters. With these two specifically, I'm kind of more interested in the 2025 outlook. A lot of these guys I'm going to focus on this year because they're young guys. We still need to decide if we like them down the stretch and all. But for these two, again, they're locks. So where are you at next year on Wu and Miller? These guys that are rising up your board, were they already up your board? How do you feel?
Miller was already up my board. He was a guy that I definitely targeted, especially later in drafts. I just felt like he was overlooked because of how good the rest of that rotation is. Wu has been the kind of opposite for me. I love Brian Wu from a straight skills perspective, though I do worry that he is like really fastball heavy. Um,
Hmm. Rare in today's game, but it's
yeah,
been so
but
good that
it's been so
he rides that.
effective that um, my main issue with Wu has reoccurred this year, and as you mentioned, he only has 16 starts, and that's because he's had elbow issues dating back to last summer. So we've got a
Not
full
fun.
year of elbow issues, and I just feel like he is a ticking time bomb waiting to happen. That at some point he's going to end up getting Tommy John, uh, but you can't not use him if you have him. Like you just kind of have to ride it. So for me, it's going to depend a lot on price
Hmm.
for Brian Wu. I just don't know if the price is going to make enough sense to kind of ride that train again. Especially if he ends the year with like a 2.20 ERA, like
Right.
he's going to be a top 100 pick, and that is like, or maybe even higher, and like that's going to be something where are you really going to want your SP2 to be a guy that's elbow might explode at any minute? I I know that every pitcher has
You know,
injured
my
risk,
counter
and
would be that everyone's
absolutely,
is a pitch away from exploding, but I
but
understand it is higher
but
risk with
it is
Woo.
higher risk when
Right.
he's been on the IL like 4 times in the last year for elbow issues, forearm,
Well,
elbow, those
also
kind
the
of things.
hammy. Also the
Yeah.
hammy was the most recent one, but you're not wrong. Like the elbow inflammation caused a couple missed starts early on, and then you throw in the hammy here. That's been the tough part, right? With Wu has been
Yeah.
the volume. He has just 88 innings this year, but he's been so damn good. They did both
Yes.
go in the 11 round draft, of course, and Wu went 106, Miller went 98.
Yeah.
So they kind of follow where you're at, where you like Miller more. But Wu was not that far behind. And I think that's how it's going to be in a lot of drafts. I kind of have always felt the same way about Gilbert and Kirby. Like they're kind of similar.
Mhm.
When one goes, I'll take the other. Now they're like second round picks. But I've been saying Miller Wu is kind of the young version of Gilbert Kirby, where I pair them. I see them similarly. I like Miller a little bit more as well. I'm with you there. But once one goes, that tells me I got to get the other right now because it's not going to last much longer. With Miller, I've been particularly impressed with the fact that he added the third pitch to try to mitigate some of his platoon issues. Now it's still there. In fact, both of them are still dealing with platoon issues, but they've cut into it. Last year, Miller allowed a 917 OPS against lefties and was still pretty good, right? Like nobody was complaining about what he did for most of the year. The ERA ended up at 432. He had a little bit of struggle down the stretch, but a 114 whip, 131 innings for a rookie was pretty good. This year, the OPS against lefties for Bryce Miller is down to 699. So still a bit high compared to 503 ERA, 503 whip, Jesus, 503 OPS against righties, but a vast improvement to go from 900s OPS to 700s OPS. Do you buy in Miller's ability to mitigate lefties more? And could he take another step there? Or is he always going to be one of these way better against righties and trying to survive against lefties with Bryce Miller?
I don't know how much of a step he's gonna be able to take. I mean, he's still the struggles against lefties. He just allows so much hard contact in that regard. And I mean, he did make like kind of a minor change to allow a few more walks this year and not kind of attack those lefties, especially, right?
I,
So
I wonder if that's like the splitter, because the splitter's been the big
yeah.
change for Bryce Miller that he's
Mhm.
added. It's been a real pitch. And like you said, the walks are up a little bit. Maybe he's sacrificing a little bit there. Like if they don't chase my pitch, I want to walk them as opposed to getting
Yeah.
cooked by them.
Yeah, and it has resulted in a better home run rate, right? The home run rate has dropped from 1.2 to 1.3, or so 1.2 to 1.1 this year. Though the walk rate went up, but just a minuscule amount. He's been pretty lucky though. I mean, he's got a 2.44 BABIP. The xERA is 3.7. So
What kind
I
of
don't know that.
defense? What kind of defense they running over there? Do they
I
enhance
think
their guys?
I would think it's pretty decent.
Polanco at second, your boy Rojas at third, Crawford
JP
when he's
Crawford,
healthy at
yeah,
short,
it's a
which he's
good
obviously not
defender.
right now with the busted up hand. So it's Leo Rivas, who I don't really have a read on, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I don't
Um,
know.
so yeah,
I'd have to ask people who know the Mariners better than me,
right,
like
might be
Chris
a
Crawford.
glove first type of guy. I think Rojas is a pretty good defender. Maybe that's anecdotal, but either way, you're not wrong that the BABIP's running hot for Bryce Miller.
Yeah,
So then coming next year, is he a top 100 pick for you? He went top 100 in the dead pull hitter. Do you get there with Bryce Miller?
I think he's borderline. Yeah, I
Okay.
mean, I think he's a guy who could go anywhere between like 90 and 110,
Okay.
more than
I think that's
likely.
fair.
So yeah,
Okay. And then Wu, you're probably not taking, but you're okay with him going 8 to 10 picks
yeah,
later.
it's not gonna be for me more than likely, just because I know when I do my projections, the volume
You're
really
going to keep
weighs
that volume
heavily.
down. Right.
Yeah, like I just can't imagine that I'm gonna push Woo into like a pitcher who can go 150. Like he's probably going to be like a 120, 130 kind of guy. And while the ratios will be pristine, he's had a massive drop in strikeouts this year. We're talking about a guy who's gone
Fair.
from like 25% strikeout rate last season in the majors down to 20. Now we've seen him be a 30% strikeout rate guy in the minors. So
Right.
like we know there's some upside there, but you kind of combine the elbow difficulties with a huge drop in strikeout rate, and again, it's just another warning sign that hey, this guy has an added risk level that I may not be comfortable with. Now, in a 10-team league, if for those of you playing 10-team leagues, I would be all over Brian because you can replace him really easily off of the
Easier to
wire.
replace. Yeah.
So yeah, so I would be a lot more aggressive in a shallower format. But those who play in deeper 12s or in 15s, like Woo just scares the crap out of me.
I think that's fair. I can see that with the health piece on Brian Wu, but very intriguing pitcher for sure. And also made a lot of changes to improve against lefties down to a 577 OPS. He too was in the 900s last year, so that's a huge improvement. Now, he didn't add a pitch so much as he refined his arsenal a bit, tuning up the changeup usage and bringing down the slider usage, which I imagine was probably better for lefties to hit because you get that longer look at it. So we've seen some arsenal adjustments there to help Brian Wu be better against lefties. Let's go ahead and move on to a little bit older guy. We got a lot of young guys on this list, but Sean Manaea. And you know I'm going to give you credit on this one because you put me on. And I always point that out when talking about Manaea this year, how you had told me when he was in San Francisco, he hated his role. I just had missed that. And you being a fan of the Giants, obviously more tuned in with that. And I'm sure some non-Giants fans were more tuned into it than I was too. But I didn't realize how much he hated the uncertainty of his role. Are you going to get 5 relief innings today or a start or 2 relief innings? Are you going to come in the 7th? Or are you going to get a traditional start? He didn't mess with that. Manaea just was not for that. And look, I do understand the vibe of like, do your job, whatever it is, you get paid millions of dollars, blah, blah, blah. Sure. But I also understand that some guys flourish better when they know the role. And if you want to maximize your investments, right? If you want to make it all about that, then put them in the best position to succeed. So Manaea goes out to New York. Here you're a full-time starter again. Do your thing. Little up and down to start the season. Dialed in right now.
Yeah.
Absolutely dialed in right now, Sean Manaea. Had the June swoon, classic June swoon after 307, 327 ERAs in April, May, goes to 540 in June, but then 270 and 352 these last 2 months. Months are arbitrary, and ERA is not the best indicator, but it does follow suit with the skills that he did have the struggles in June, but has turned it on since. And lately, 290 ERA, 090 whip with a 24% strikeout minus walk in the last 7 for Manaea. Is he in all formats trustworthy guy right now?
Yeah, I think so. Like this is he's been a guy that just has been so effective, especially pitching in that park. And it's one of the things we saw with the Giants last year, right? Which is Manaea is a really, really effective pitcher, but can give up home runs in bad parks. So like he's been so good in City Field, which is protected him a little bit. To me, it's all going to depend on where Manaea is next season. Is he going? I believe he signed a 2-year deal, but I want to say there's an opt out.
I can check that
I'm
for you.
I'm not 100% sure on that.
We've
So,
got a player option. So
oh,
close.
player option. Well,
There is a
player
player option
option.
for next year.
You have to think they're going to exercise that option, right?
No.
Oh no, player option.
He's in
Okay,
charge of
that's
it.
right. Yeah.
So I think he bounces out and Manaea says,
I hope
I'll
he's.
stick
I
with
hope.
y'all, but
Yeah, I hope
give
he
me 18
stays.
mil instead of
Yeah,
13.5 or something like that. Probably just try to
and
get a raise
like I think
and a
one of the
2 year.
things that yeah, I think one of the things that like he was upset was like, hey, he was going to be entering a
Right.
potential free agency situation, and they weren't using him as a starter, like they were like which really lowers his value on the market. But the Mets saw something, and I mean, I love he's been lucky. I don't want to act like this is like hey, um, this is like something where he is like completely turned back into a stud
Right.
uh, but it actually has been better on the road. Wow, that's crazy.
And I think there is a lot of believability here too, right? Because he is running low BABIP, which I'm sure is part of
Yeah.
what you're getting at with the good fortune from Anaya at 260.
Hmm.
It's 33 points down. But notice that the fly balls are up more, and that's going to be conducive to fewer hits. Now, it
Hmm.
leaves you susceptible to the homers, but he's at a flat 1.0 mark, and I can live with that from Manaya. And perhaps the best thing of late during this stretch is he's not walking as many guys, right? Even at his best, Manaya has been somebody who can walk guys. In fact, we even saw he blew a start at Seattle, which was frustrating, right? Because they have
Hmm.
been like the easiest team to just decimate. And throughout this
Especially for
recent,
lefties.
right? Oh, and his other bad start recently at Miami. So that's really annoying. Again, he has an extended run here where he's been great. In fact, I only gave you the last 7. You could dip back the last 14, and it's a 293 ERA with 89 Ks and 83 innings for Manaya. That goes all the way back to June 14th. It is pretty funny that his worst starts are at Miami, at Seattle, which should have been like 25 strikeouts for him. But anyway, back to my point. He did walk 5 Mariners, but 0, 1, 0, 0 walks in the 4 starts since then. Or excuse me, 3 starts since then, and then there was a 0 walk game before that. But anyway, Manaya is walking fewer outside of a few bad games. What do you make of that? So he just loses his vibe a little bit in certain games and then gets dialed in because we have a 4 walk at the Yankees. We have 3 walks at Pittsburgh. What is it? What is it with him? Giving up these shitty teams. Okay, he went 6 innings, 0 runs there. The 3 walks at Pittsburgh did not hurt him. But then another 5 walks against the Yankees. I can understand that, trying to maneuver around that lineup, having 9 walks and 2 starts. But the 5 at
Yeah.
Seattle is so bizarre. I guess the bottom line is we've seen these outlier games. Do you believe in the control gains from Manaya on the big scale, even though individual games have popped up and still had the walk issue?
I mean, I do because he's had such, big stretches where he has these kind of blips where it may just be a matter of like he doesn't feel a certain pitch or something. But
Right.
for the most part, he's just been really, really good in terms of, attacking the zone, and not allowing too many walks. So, his zone percentage is up to 54% this year, and that's I think just more indicative of a guy who's trying to make sure thinks he has good stuff. He's like, hey, if you hit it, I've got a nice big ballpark behind me
Right.
that's going to protect
Good
me and
defense,
a
or at
great
least some
defense.
competent defenders. They're not all amazing. I don't want to overstate it, but there are
But
some capable defenders in the outfield,
the outfield defenders are pretty decent, right?
especially
And
if
so,
Bader and Nimmo are out there. Right, it kind of depends what lineup he gets,
well,
and now Marte's back too. So if he gets all 3 of them, that could be
and
pretty nice.
especially comparatively speaking to the team he spent last season, which has the worst outfield defense in all of baseball last year,
Correct.
right?
Your
So
Giants, they couldn't move for shit in a spacious outfield at that.
so he's allowed more fly balls this year, but he's dropped his home run to fly ball rate, right? So
Right.
he's like, I'm going to take advantage of the outfield defense I have here in New York. So again, yeah, I think for me, because he most certainly will not opt into this contract.
No, no. This
He
Mania we're
will
talking about still. Go ahead.
he will look to get a 2 to 3 year contract,
Absolutely.
either from the Mets or from somewhere else. I hope he stays in New York. I think
I think he should stay. I really hope he does too. I think Mania has been a nice fit there. Get him a nice 3-year deal at, you know, 16 per or something like that.
yeah.
That seems
Hmm.
fair. 3 for 48. I just pushed my mouse off my desk. Don't worry, I got a backup.
You don't need that.
I don't need it. I got a backup here. I'll pick it up later. Anyway, let's move on to our next guy, Bowden Francis. Okay,
Whew.
I think I maybe went an episode without mentioning Greg. He's getting the showcase again. He was on this Bowden Francis situation, especially for the 2-step. So he hasn't been like on him all year because Bowden Francis hasn't been good all year. But when he returned, things started looking better. He had this big 2-step coming up that was pretty well regarded in the fantasy community, but it ended up being like one of the best 2-step streams of the year. Bowden Francis put up 14 innings, allowed 4 hits, no walks, struck out 15, and got 2 wins. Like, this was at the Angels and at the Cubs. So it was a great setup, just a brilliant setup. And he kept it going from there because the schedule continued to bless him. His start last week, he gave up 1 run on a hit. It was a solo homer in 8 innings, 12 punchies facing the Angels a second time. Bowden Francis has been badass lately. Is this real? Is he going to be a G down the stretch? He gets a big test tomorrow at Fenway. How do we feel about Bowden Francis as a league winner down the stretch?
This is one of those things that's like really, really frustrating for me because uh, I picked up Bowden Francis in,
Uh
I think,
oh.
two leagues, right around the same time that Greg did. But I had him benched last week.
Oh,
Um,
oh, oh. In all fairness, so did Greg.
okay,
I
I
listen.
it
Now he has
was
a unique circumstance where he is like stacking relievers. He did get the two step and kept Francis,
and
but he was kicking himself for benching him for the extra closer.
and I am in a unique situation too, where like I'm like really really far ahead in pitching,
Mm-hmm.
but it still hurts.
Of
Like
course.
to like
And he even said that too. He's like, I know my process. I needed to
yeah.
start these closers, but oh my God, when you see 8 innings of 1 run ball with 12 Ks on your bench, you want to bang your head on a wall.
So I mean, the main difference for Bowden Francis from the first half to the second half
Mm-hmm.
is the command. The command has just been so much better, and I think that is going to be key for Bowden Francis really for the rest of his career. His stuff
Right.
is really good. I don't think there's any question that he's got good stuff. That I think he has a pretty complete arsenal in terms of kind of his repertoire. He can throw four pitches. He is fastball heavy, but he still has that curve that he uses like 20% of the time, and two other pitches that he can go to. Uh, the problem is he struggles with command start to start. Now, this stretch has been pretty, amazing, where he is really outside of that first start at Baltimore, which any Baltimore team can get you. He hasn't given
Right.
up more than one home run in any of these starts since then, right? So he's doing a really really good job of making sure he keeps the ball in the yard. Like even the home run he gave up in the last one was legitimately his last, pitch that he threw. He had a no hitter. He was at 107 pitches, and Taylor Ward just got him. Like,
Right.
but he was tiring and like
And that was
I've
all
been
he gave
really
up.
yeah, and then they went out, they pulled him. Uh I think Bowden Francis has a lot of potential, but I do worry about this end of the season stretch really boosting up his ADP.
That's going
Um,
to really be interesting to see what happens because Bowden Francis had some heat in the spring. There were folks
yeah,
that were on him. I think Greg was actually among them to bring it full
yeah,
circle there. And obviously everyone had to move off. He had the brutal first outing at Houston, bad at New York after that. Schedule wasn't doing him any favors with at Astros, at Yankees to open the year, but things just weren't really working out. He matriculated over to the bullpen, even got sent out for a little bit. But he's come back and really looked like the guy that his proponents were hyped for. Now, let's see. I don't think he went in the pull hitter draft, but this was also before he put up these, at least all three of them. I don't think all three of these starts had happened by any stretch. And I'm looking and I don't see him, which is not surprising, right? 11 rounds. I don't think he should have gone. But
but he will.
if he
I
has a
mean,
big
like,
September, he will.
yeah,
So
yeah.
if they did the draft today, where do you think Bowden Francis would go? Would he go in the top 11? Would it be like right after that if they did like a 15-round draft?
No,
Like where do you think
I
he
think
is today?
I think he's in the top 11 right now.
Okay.
So the question really becomes like, how comfortable do you feel with his command kind of moving forward? Because command has been an issue
Right.
throughout kind of his career, in the minor leagues. And in this early stretch this season, the major league for Bowden Francis, like he was really, really struggling with command. It's one of the reasons why I think for those of you who don't play in like super competitive leagues, and by super competitive, I mean like the NFBC kind of sphere. Bound France is going to be a massive at a massive discount. I think if you're playing on Yahoo, if you're playing in your home league, I
They're
think
just
you're
going to
going
the
to be
radar a little bit, you think?
I well, I mean, he's got a 4 ERA
That's
for
the
the
thing too.
season, and
At
like
the end
the
of the day,
xERA is 378. It's not going to look sparkling
right.
necessarily.
Well, and that influences where guys sit in the auto drafter too. and this is something our boys at in this league, Bogman and the Welsh, do an amazing
Yeah.
job of during their preview episodes. They go to each of the big venues and kind of find the big differences in their
Yep.
default ADP, because that is a huge thing. And if you are a multi-platform player and you have let's say Bowden Francis, for example, is your dude, it is worth knowing that on ESPN's, he's ranked, I'm being hypothetical here, but he's ranked like 202, but then on Yahoo, he's ranked 379. Just it in the course of drafts, you're going to have a better chance at getting him cheaper, where he's listed 379 versus 202. So that is something worth noting. And obviously, the final stretch of games here will be a big determining factor in exactly how high Bowden Francis can get listed in those defaults. Because even with a sparkling another 5 or 6 starts, he can only get so high, because we're going to be talking
Hmm.
like 100 innings or 110 innings of good work here, but it won't push him to the very, very top. I will say this, that's been very impressive. He has 8 starts and 7 wins. Now, not all 7 wins have come from starts. Again, he was in the bullpen, but just
Hmm.
kind of looking at that juxtaposition, especially against Jason, our boy Jason Collette has been sending us. I think he's first in every pitching category and like last or second to last in wins. And then to see something like this for Bowden Francis would probably drive him absolutely insane.
They're gonna be like a number of those this year, where it's very Cliff
There's tons of
Lee-ish
them.
seasons, like
Right.
where you've got these guys who are amazing that have like 8 wins, and then other guys who have been like either mediocre or not that great, and they've got 14 wins
And
as a
it's just
ceiling.
going to drive you nuts. And that just happens. That's the vagaries of the win. But it's even tougher these days with guys like, going that tight 5, maybe into the 6th. This guy has been putting himself in a position for wins and putting his fantasy teams very much in the position for wins. Ryan Nelson is somebody who we have not talked enough about. And, I will cop to that as the person who makes the rundowns, because outside of like a 2-step episode, maybe, in fact, the last episode he was on, yeah, was May 31st. So I don't know if I had graduated him off the 2 steps, which probably wouldn't have made sense because he actually struggled a bit. I don't know. I frankly do not know why he has missed our radar, but Ryan Nelson is absolutely on fire. Justin, 276 ERA, 095 whip, 21% strikeout minus walk in his last 10 outings, 9 of which are starts, and the other is a 5-inning relief appearance. I want to say somebody got hit by a comebacker that game. Oh no, it was a straight opener. Straight opener. Joe Mantiply opened for him. I thought it was some like the starter had gotten hit
Hmm.
by I might have made that up about somebody else then. I don't know. But either way, he's been dialed in and he's going 6 plus consistently. In fact, during these 10 outings, he's only gone fewer than 6 3 times, 5, 5, and 5 2/3. And one of the fives was that, having an opener there, so he was still in line for the win. It was against the Dodgers; they didn't win. 5 2/3 at the Cubs, he still got the win. And then 5 innings against the Pirates in Pittsburgh. That's actually his only bad start during this run. 5 innings, 4 runs, 7 Ks. So Ryan Nelson's dialed in. The fastball looks amazing. How believable is this down the stretch as the D-backs surge and Ryan Nelson is a major reason for it?
Oh man. So I know we do talk a lot about like all the guys that we were here early on, that
Right.
that like all of a sudden they break out like the year we finally give up. But we don't give enough shout outs to people in the industry who saw a certain guy coming and that they end up being that dude and the rest of us profit when they don't. But Nick Pollock has loved Ryan Nelson in the
Right.
past.
Big
Like
Ryan
that
Nelson guy last year.
he's been huge. I don't know where he was at on him this year, but
I
like,
think he still liked him, but like was banging the drum last year when he was putting up this 5.31 ERA, saying there's
yeah,
talent here, y'all. Keep on top of it.
like I just didn't think the opportunity was going to be there, and I think that maybe that is part of the reason why we haven't talked a lot about him, is because there was always this fear that he was going to get kind of taken out of the rotation and put back in the bullpen. One, because his stuff plays better in the bullpen than maybe other starters in that rotation, and they're always seem to be like about to get a guy back, right? They're about to get Jordan Montgomery back. They're about to get Eduardo Rodriguez back.
Right.
And so, like, I think there was this, at least for me, there was this fear like he's going to be the guy that goes down, or goes into the bullpen.
Well, because he wasn't
But
pitching well either. So it was a fair
yeah,
consideration to think like,
but we should have seen like, hey, like he's actually pitching better than we expected. Now, the turnaround from first half to second half um, has been unreal in the strikeout department. Like all of a sudden, he went from a guy who had a six K per nine to having a Ryan Nelson as a 10K per nine in the second half. Like he is just attacking hitters in the zone, and I don't know if this was an organizational kind of change for him. Um, and the crazy thing is actually not. So he's actually saying, "I'm not going to attack you in the zone." He's dropped his zone percentage from 59 to 56. And remember, when we talk about zone percentage, that a few percentage points change can be a massive change for a guy. Because considering how many
It's
pitches
been
the guy throws, and it's
like
been really, really, important for Ryan Nelson because on top of not going inside of the zone, going outside of the zone more, he's also getting his swing percentage up. So that's leading to these strikeouts. I mean, I think that there is a lot of reason to believe that Ryan Nelson, like this is at least close to what Ryan Nelson is. Obviously, maybe he's been pretty lucky in the second half.
I think he's
Um,
just dealing. I mean, okay,
but
not just dealing like there's no good fortune or anything, but I love the strikeout improvement. There's just a lot to like here. And listen, I was a Dre Jameson in the Dre Jameson versus Ryan Nelson wars there for a little bit, but I was
mhm.
not out on Nelson as potentially good. It's just that picking one, I thought Dre Jameson could be that dude. But
he
seeing Nelson here, I've just been super impressed. And I've seen like three or four of these starts, just happen to be watching because the D backs are hot and if they're playing a good team. So, I'm drinking the Kool Aid here. I'm pretty keyed in on Nelson.
I am too, because even in the first half when he was struggling, he was still not really walking guys, and his home run rate was right around league average, right around one per a homer per nine.
Right.
Um, he was just getting unlucky with some bad BABIP in that first half, and in a really minuscule strand rate. In the second half, the strand rate has kind of normalized, where he's at 76%, which is not like, hey, he's not stranding 90% of the runners. So it's like I don't think he's getting lucky, but I think that it just kind of normalized. And the BABIP has gone down. I think the BABIP may find a kind of a median point next
Mm-hmm.
year where we're not like looking at it as I don't think a 286 BABIP is something he's going to maintain necessarily, but a 300 BABIP would probably be fine. And I think even if you normalize kind of those factors, he'd still be running like a 320 ERA with a strikeout per inning, which
Right.
I think that's a top 40 starting pitcher heading into next
Oh,
season. I don't think he's going to be looked at like that. Like he'll obviously get some heat in some places, but I think it's very similar to Bowden Francis, where Ryan Nelson is going to be kind of buried in the ADPs of your Yahoo and your ESPN
right.
leagues. Maybe in NFBC's higher, but I don't think he's going to be a guy that necessarily jumps off the page, especially because in many ways Arizona is not paid attention to with the same light.
Right.
Uh,
It it it
Similar
just
to
happens.
Toronto, right?
Right.
Like West Coast or not, they're not West Coast, but like a
But they're on the
Western
West. They
team.
play the West
They
time
play,
frame.
yeah, they play later, so East Coast people don't really stay up as late to watch the games. And like I think he's overshadowed by not necessarily talent in that rotation, but the names in that rotation.
Yeah,
So
you'd think the internet age would mitigate some of that, but it still
it
happens,
doesn't.
right?
Yeah.
And again, on the timing of it, people working, standard 8 to 5 jobs, they can't be staying up all hours of the night, watching
Cowards.
guys. What's that? Cowards, yes, they
I
are
call them
indeed. They are
cowards. Yeah.
indeed cowards. But no, I do think some guys still slip under the radar like that. And Ryan Nelson could definitely be one of them. But he's pushing guys to help win their leagues right now. He gets the Mets tomorrow. Not an easy matchup, but then at San Francisco, at Houston next week. Of course, you're always worried about Houston, and your boys have been playing pretty well. But I'm not taking him out of the lineup anywhere. I think Nelson's an all formats guy right now, pretty easily, right?
Yeah, and I mean, my boy's been playing well, but once again, this is not the offense. This is
Yeah, we do not run from them because
yeah,
the pitching is generally why they win. Same with my
yeah,
Tigers, right? Like they're competent. In fact, we are ALNL versions of each other. In fact, we have
yeah.
the same exact record right now, Pitching leads the team. There's some competency in the pitching or in the hitting, but you never run from them. Even this Tiger youth infused lineup, I'm still going to start most guys against them. But let's talk about Spencer Arrighetti, and a weird link to the Tigers. They beat the hell out of him back when their offense was like worse than the league type vibe. Even Seattle was pointing and laughing at them at that time. And that really stunned me. I was like, what is up with this dude? He had started to turn a corner, Spencer Arrighetti did. And it was looking like, okay, maybe you can start trusting this prospect. And he was somebody I liked coming into the year. And then they dropped 7 on him in an inning and a third. And I'm like, maybe it's just a 2025 situation with this Arrighetti guy. I'll check in later. He wasn't very good against the White Sox in the next start. 4 and a third, 3 runs, 4 walks. I'm like, this guy sucks. No, I didn't say that, but I'm just like, I'm out. 7 scoreless with 10 Ks, no walks against Colorado. Now look at that schedule blessing, by the way. Detroit, White Sox, Colorado in late June there, and he ends up giving up 10 earned in the 3 starts because of how much he blew it against Detroit. But that Colorado outing spurred something, because while he was bad in the next start against Toronto, you take that whole sample, the last 10 outings for Spencer Arrighetti, and you've got 3.53 ERA with 75 Ks and 58 and 2/3. He has been really good. In fact, if you then jump off the Toronto start and go since then to lop those 6 earned runs off, it's even better. Obviously, you can start to craft the sample how you want it. But I'll take the big 10 start sample and say, Spencer Arrighetti's been a guy right now. I'm consistently recommending him across all formats, even in some of the tougher matchups. Like, people might have skipped that trip to Fenway, and I wouldn't have necessarily blamed them, but they left 13 Ks on their bench if they did. Is Spencer Arrighetti a dude? After beating up on an easier schedule, he now has, I almost said complete games, quality starts against the Dodgers, Red Sox, and Baltimore. In Fenway and in Camden, I might add as well. Is Spencer Arrighetti a stud?
I don't know that he's a stud, but I think he has
Is he
made
how about emerging? Like, we can't call him stud off of 10 starts, but do you believe that there's more? Like, can he be a dude?
He's gonna be one of these. Arrighetti's gonna be one of these guys that in spring training I'm really watching the walks, right? Like, the huge difference in walks is why Arrighetti has been better in the second half. I mean, and for context, he had a 12% walk rate in the first half. It's down to 6% in the second half. Like, it's a massive, because he always had the strikeouts, right? The strikeouts were
been nasty.
Yeah, the stuff's been good. What he's done is like attack the zone more. He's raised his zone percentage 3%, and he's done that and still gotten the swings and misses. So the question is, can he continue to attack the zone and have good control? So for me, it's going to be very much, I'll probably take some calculated gambles on him in early drafts, but I really want to see what he looks like in spring, because, one of the things that we care about in spring training is whether a guy is finding the zone or not, right?
Right.
We don't care quite as much about home runs as we do about, strikeouts and walks, or those two things. And I think that's the big thing for Arrighetti. Now, I think he was pretty unlucky in the first half in terms of his BABIP. I think he has gotten...
His walk issues were being compounded by some BABIP troubles, and when you've already got guys on, obviously that just becomes a merry-go-round, and the runs just kept coming for Arrighetti.
He had a 344 BABIP in the first half.
While walking 12%. Like, you're just tanked. You're done at that point. You cannot get enough strikeouts to overcome that combo.
Yeah.
So,
and he's also had a 10% higher strand rate in the second half. So, like, I think the strand rate maybe finds a middle point between the first half and the second half. I think that the BABIP, and that maybe Arrighetti is more of like a 3.6 kind of ERA pitcher.
Okay, that works.
But with strikeout, with a fair amount of strikeouts, and I would assume that like he is gonna keep pushing that innings total up. He'll probably finish with around 130 or something like this year. And next year we can probably comfortably like project him for 150. So
Might get closer to. I mean, that only leaves him 14 innings. How many more starts are they gonna get?
Oh, I thought he was closer to.
Like 5 or
Um,
6. So
okay.
he might get closer to. Let me see how many pitches or how many innings he threw last year. Arrighetti threw a buck 25. Okay, so he's not in like major
Yeah.
danger
So
here.
maybe get to 140, close to 150 this year, and we could be saying like, hey, he's an easy guy to pencil in for 160 to 170.
He's kind of building nicely here with the stair step. Now he will get some playoff innings, and those kind of count a little extra. We'll have to see
Hmm.
how that goes. But I like Arrighetti, and he's been really impressive. Again, maybe not a dude yet. I agree with you there, showing some restraint, but really intrigued by what he can do. Couple tough battles coming up here. Goes to Philly today. They have not been
Hmm.
playing their best, but it's always tough to go into Philly. And then goes to Cincinnati after that. Again, they are far from the team that you and I thought they were going to be this year, but I'm always nervous going into Cincy. Doesn't mean I'm sitting him anywhere. Arrighetti is an all format start for me right now.
I sat him in labor this week,
At
but
Philly,
only
I don't hate
yeah,
that.
only because I didn't want to like potentially like torch my whip.
Right. And
Uh,
you're trying not to eat like the
yeah,
250 whip game or the 8 earned
yeah.
run game. Like, and I'm always okay with people being a little bit bomb averse down the stretch here, right? Where
But
you're really just trying to avoid the 7 earned run type of duds.
generally speaking, you probably shouldn't be benching
But you
here.
also have great pitching in that, like
Yeah,
that. You are afforded the ability to not start someone like that.
yeah.
It's kind of like my TGFBI team, man. While we're bragging about teams, like I don't even start Seth Lugo half the time. Not because
Hmm.
I think he sucks, but because I got a billion good pitchers. So it happens sometimes when you can construct a good enough staff. But most people are probably starting Arrighetti consistently, and I think that's the right move. But if
Yeah.
you're not starting that Spencer, you're definitely starting this Spencer. I will not accept that you're not starting Spencer Schwellenbach in all formats. He was a two-step this week, and even though it was a difficult one at Mini, at Philly, that's he's earned enough for me that I was comfortably starting Schwellenbach there. And he gets Toronto next week, no issues there for me. I mean, they can get you, but like I'm just not sitting him anywhere. You've been on the Schwellenbach train all year. What are you seeing here in this emergence that has led to a 260 ERA, 094 whip, and 28% strikeout minus walk over the last 9? You want to talk about league winner? Schwellenbach's winning people leagues. I really do believe that with this kind of performance.
Yeah, I mean, I I told people kind of I think in like June, July, you know, like, hey, I know Schwellenbach's like first few starts haven't looked good, but I think this guy is a dude. Like I really do. I really do think that this is going to be a guy that has a massive second half, and that we're talking about as a top 100 pick heading into 2025. And it's very true. Like he does not walk guys. He gets strikeouts. Like he's got a full arsenal with good stuff. Pitches for what should be a really, really good team, but you and I were talking off air. Like it's the most snake bitten team I have seen that has remained competitive. We've seen lots
It's
of
been
snake bitten
so
teams
impressive.
over the years, but not one that like has been so snake bitten with injuries. I mean, they've lost their three best hitters and their best pitcher. Um, and
And
Charlie Morton is now the crypt keeper in Atlanta, and all of a sudden, like they are still only 6 games out in one of the most competitive divisions in baseball.
right.
Uh, like it's unreal just like how Atlanta has been able to persevere through like what would kill a lot of really really good teams.
You didn't have
Um,
Raylo and Schwellenbach basically bridging the gap for
yeah,
Strider this
and
year.
Chris Sale
Who
turning it back into
who
prime
didn't
Chris
have that?
Sale. Yeah, like it's been unreal, and Schwellenbach has been a huge part of that. Uh, and I do think that I if anybody if there's only one dude on this list, and I think there is more than one dude, obviously. For me, it's
Right.
Schwellenbach. I just think he is really really talented. I think there is a super high floor here as long as he is healthy. And I think the upside is that of like a top, like an SP2. Maybe he's
Yeah.
never the SP1, but
But he might
I
be. I'm geeking out for Schwellenbach. I'm a
yeah,
big fan, dude. He went 141 in the Deadpool hitter draft. That's up 40 picks if they rerun it today,
yeah,
I
I
think.
I completely agree. Like I just
Let's talk a division mate there. And you mentioned how difficult the NL East is, and it's in part due to the fact that like the Nats they don't give you 3 free wins. Now they're 60 and 73. I don't want to overstate that as like, oh well, they're really changing the outlook of the division there. It's the Phillies, Braves, and Mets that make it a tough division, but there is only one full-on doormat, and that's the Marlins, because the Nats, they're starting to put their pieces together here, by the way. And I know your boy Gore has fallen off. That would have been really nice if like Gore and DJ Hers, our next guy that we're going to talk about, we're joining like Jake Irvin and Mitchell Parker to look like the next nice rotation there. But Hers is really stepping up. Jake Irvin's been pretty good all year. Parker hit a little low, but he's kind of come back. Like I said, Gore's fallen off. And then their offensive pieces are starting to come together. You can kind of see what the next Nats good team might look like here. But let's talk DJ Hers, the young flame-throwing lefty here. All about the command and control with him, right? When it's on, he can be looking like one of the best pitchers in baseball. And when it's off, it's like get this guy back to Double-A, and maybe even High A to kind of see what's going on with him. He's currently succeeding even with some of his walk issues. He got a little bit of a Blake Snell vibe in the intention behind some of the walks. It seems like, okay, I don't want to get caught up here on a 3-1 pitch that's going to be a meatball. I'm still going to throw my competitive pitch. If they don't swing at it, I'll try to get him back on the next guy. So during this run here where DJ Hers is putting up a 2.45 ERA and 1.13 whip, it is only a 20% strikeout minus walk because the walks are still around 10%. So let's keep that in mind. He's not quite on the level of some of these other guys that we've been talking about, but DJ Hers has been impressive. And in our deep league universe, he has made himself into an impact player. How do you feel about Hers down the stretch? Because the win potential is, modest with being a Nat, but he gets the Cubs this week at Pittsburgh next week. DJ Hers been somebody you've been trusting down the stretch here at all?
I mean, it's so interesting because, like, if you look at some of his splits, you kind of go, I don't understand exactly what is like his approach. Like, he's much better at home, which the Nationals Park is kind of a hitter's park, if I'm remembering correctly.
I think it's one of these ones that fluctuates a bit because it has been a big time hitter's park. I remember specifically when Schwarber went there, learning about like the depth of how much of a hitter's park it is. But I think it has vacillated a little bit toward more neutral. I'm looking right now. Is this just called Nationals Park? Okay, it's still 6th at a 102 park factor. It boosts homers and singles. It mitigates triples. Who cares about that? Such a rare event. It's neutral on doubles. And I know some people are like, what do you mean a park has a strikeout factor? Well, the whole setup of the park and the backdrop, you can have different situations there. It's, I guess, it's an 88. So that means it's bad for strikeouts or good. It's tied with Coors, so I'm gonna guess that's 88 here is bad.
I would assume it's bad.
Okay.
And
T-Mobile is tops at 115,
but he's been much better in terms of
on that part. But anyway, go ahead on DJ Hers. Sorry,
he's much better for strikeouts at home,
right?
And he's also much better for ERA at home, right? He's got a 3.59 ERA at home. DJ Hers does, with a 4.30 road ERA. 56 to 27 strikeouts. Now he has double the innings almost at home than DJ Hers does on the road, but he has twice as many walks too. This is going to be one where I'm really going to need to like deep dive in the offseason. I'm obviously not going to have time to do it over the course of the next month as we kind of grind through, but like I'm going to have to go back and watch all the DJ Hers starts to kind of figure out exactly what's going on here, because I don't know if this is a Blake Snell, I'm trying to be intentional about my walks.
Not as I don't want to make a 1-to-1 there, right? Blake Snell is a 2-time Cy Young superstar, but DJ Hers is a young rookie.
I don't care about the results necessarily in terms of like, or even the talent level, but I do care about the intention. Like, are they setting up outside of the zone when he is walking?
To try to get them to swing at his pitch, and if they don't, like that's what we're talking about with these like intentional walks. Then where you don't just lay a meatball. Right.
Yeah. Or is it a matter of like he doesn't hit his spots consistently?
Because he doesn't hit his spots, exactly.
Yeah. And he just hasn't gotten burned in the second half in the way that he got burned in the first half, right?
Right.
So,
I think
uh,
there is a decent bit of that. I
so
was
and
impressed with
that
his trip to Atlanta. He put up five innings of one hit ball, but did still have three walks. Just didn't get beat by any of them. Went to Baltimore and stood tall. 6 innings, 2 runs, 2 walks, 4 hits, 5 Ks. Right. So we've seen these sort of like standout moments. Milwaukee, 5 innings, 1 unearned run on 2 hits. So he's stood tall against tough teams. DJ Hers has, but there is that inconsistency with the walks. His last 4 outings, 4, 2, 2, and 3 walks. Like that is something that is brewing for potential trouble. So
yeah.
spinning it forward down the stretch here, Cubs at Pittsburgh, and then if things stay on schedule, it's Miami. The schedule's favoring him
I
pretty
you
nicely. So
have
even
I think you're using him and just kind
even
of
with the concern, right?
yeah, I think you're just closing your eyes
I think
and
so too.
going like, hey, you've got me this far in the second half. I'm gonna keep rolling with you. But I also there is risk, right?
When
Like
there's
there is
when there's walks like this, in a way, the opponent doesn't matter because anybody can take advantage of
and
walks on the wrong
if you
day.
look at his game log, like some of his worst starts of the year against teams that like we wouldn't necessarily like it was
Exactly.
St. Louis when St. Louis was struggling,
You
obviously
mean all
Colorado.
year then? Because they've been
Yeah.
struggling.
So, but
But
like,
like your
like
Giants ran him
yeah,
out.
he walked four against my Giants and gave up 2 earned runs in 2 2/3. Like that's not, but then he walks only one against Milwaukee.
Right.
Like
And
and it
dominates
doesn't
them.
allow, yeah, it doesn't allow an earned run. Like I, this is, I'm going to sit down and I'll watch, the 19 starts that he has this
Just be
year
careful,
and
right?
figure it
This is
out. Yeah.
It's a good guy. I'm starting DJ Hers, but there is plenty of risk. Like he can still burn you. And maybe one of these two guys could too on the Oakland A's that we'll finish up with. Osvaldo Bido and JP Sears. Now, listen, I know the whole bingo card thing. I didn't have that on my bingo card. Is a little bit overused, but I don't know how many guesses I would have had to have on this proverbial bingo card for you to get me to say that, wow, I'm Osvaldo Bido is going to put up a 117 ERA and 087 whip in a 4 start run. Like that's not even a huge run, 4 starts. But I never was looking at Osvaldo Bido as somebody who could put together such a nice run. Remember, he's from the Pirates, now moved
Hmm.
on to the A's, and they've landed on something here. Maybe, I don't know, maybe just flash in the pan. But 28-year-old has been pretty good. And even on the composite, all 50 innings this year, 324 ERA, 114 whip, but really dialed in of late, kind of tamping down his walk issues to
Yeah.
find some success. Do you believe in any of this? This has included some pretty difficult outings too. The Dodgers, I guess really just the Dodgers, because then Toronto, San Francisco, and Tampa Bay. None of those scare me. Not even the Jays really. But either way, he's doing the thing. Do you believe at all in Osvaldo Bido?
I don't know. I guess it's another one where it's going to be me looking more deeply at it because I
Right.
don't watch a lot of A's starts. But I he had a 14.5% walk rate in the first half. He's got it down below 10% here in the second half. Is it really believable that he's made a massive change? I mean, not really. Like the underlying skills, underlying swing and contact skills, like are virtually the same in the first half and the second half. Like there's,
Hit me with the
yeah,
BABIP. I'm wondering if there's a big BABIP change here.
yeah, sure. He's his BABIP in the second half has been 247. In the first half, it was 261. Like
Okay,
it's
so
so. I
that
mean,
is an improvement, but 261 is still pretty damn good. I was
yeah,
thinking you might go with like a 372 down to 208 or some crap. But no, okay, the control gains have been the biggest deal here for Beto, and I'm trying to do
yeah.
this on the fly to see if there's been any pitch mix situations here, but let's focus short term because we don't need to worry about next year yet. He's at Cincinnati today, and then gets a Seattle Detroit two-step next week at home. How juicy is that potentially for
Mhm.
Beto? In fact, Sears gets the same one. That's part of why I put them together here because they get the same matchups these next 2 weeks at Cincy and then the Seattle Detroit two-step.
I
How trust?
benched him. I benched him because I
You
did
benched
pick him
Beto
up.
for
I
this one.
benched Beto for this one at Cincinnati.
Okay.
Um, but I think I will probably roll him out for
I think
the
you got it
rest.
for the two-step, right?
Right? I have a
That's
really
just
hard
too high.
time, not doing that. He has been better at home, which is one of the reasons. No, I mean he hasn't been bad necessarily on the road. The one thing with Beto that I'll mention that we didn't need to mention with the other guys is just the lack of innings, right? Like
Right.
he's only thrown 50 innings this year. And so like the sample sizes are really really small and things could change really really quickly. But yeah, I mean he's been a much better pitcher on
There have
at
been
home.
some strong pitch mix changes in this last four starts here. If you just kind of block off August versus the rest of the year. Now I don't have enough time to kind of get into detail here
Yeah,
on which of these pitches are good and bad, but it looks like the fastball usage is up about 10 points.
yeah,
And it's come out of the cutter, the sinker. So he has like three fastballs, and it's come out of the slider too. So he is going kind of fastball changeup heavy because the changeup has doubled in usage to 20%, and the fastball, like I said, has gone up 10 points to 46%. So it seems like fastball changeup has been kind of the focus here for Beto. It's been successful. I understand any trepidation that you're going to have going forward here, but I don't really see how I'm getting
and
him out of the lineup for that two-step at least.
for both Beto and the next guy we're going to talk about in JP
Sears,
Sears,
yeah. Let's go ahead and bring
uh
Sears in then.
we don't care about next year because they're going to be playing in
Right.
Sacramento, and like it's going to be, unless one of them ends up on a different team, which with Oakland can always happen, right?
True.
Um, I want nothing to do with pitching regularly in Sacramento. I just think
No,
that is
it's
going to be
terrifying.
a disaster.
By the way, the schedule gods are really, really, really trying to make Osvaldo Beto a league winner. He gets a trip to the White Sox the following week, and then a trip to the Cubs the week after that.
Yeah, so
So,
enjoy the rest of this year,
right.
and then throw them out for a
And then
dollar
bid,
really early on,
see if
and
somebody will put five on him or something.
yeah, and see how excited someone else gets about getting him for $4. Yeah,
Right. But yeah, he's been great. Sears, a guy I've liked pretty much since they traded for him. I thought that was a really nice pickup there. He's got a 3.41 ERA, 106 whip, and 20% strikeout minus walk in his last 10, despite that including starts of 5 and 7 earned. And so I kept that Big Ten start sample just to show that even with a couple mega duds in there, Sears has still been pretty damn amazing. Imagine if those weren't in there. You can't because they exist, including his most recent start against Milwaukee, which, hey, if you've been streaming
yeah,
Sears, you didn't even start that one. And guess who the other one was against? The 7 earned. Houston. You
yeah.
very feasibly skipped both of these in most situations. Maybe you were desperate in a 15 teamer and so you stuck with him. But for the most part, these were avoidable outings from Sears. And so you've just been collecting all these gems against San Francisco, 7 2/3, 1 run, at Toronto, 7 innings, 3 runs, against the White Sox, 7 innings, 1 run, 7 shutout against your boys again in San Francisco. Sears, is he as who's more trustworthy between the two for you down the stretch here, Beto or Sears? And again, they get the same starts for the foreseeable future.
I think it's Sears just because I feel really confident that he's going to go at least 5 or 6 innings in every
Mm-hmm.
start. Like, I mean, he, over the course of his last 6 starts, he's gone at least 6, and he's gone 7 in the majority, except for this last one versus Milwaukee where he got beat up, right? So I feel
And
like
he's
I'm going to
improved
get
his walk
volume.
rate year over year. Sorry about that. He's improved his walk rate since getting to
Yeah,
Oakland. It was 9%, then 7, and now 6 this year. So I like that improvement from Sears.
I do too. My problem with Sears is he's one of those guys that really tricks me in terms of I think he's better when I watch him. And I, like I sit down and I watch a JP Sears start and I go, this guy has a really, really complete arsenal. He doesn't have overpowering stuff. And like I hope you put the board that you built for this episode for us on the rundown, because if you look at the stuff plus, he's got the worst stuff plus of any of these pitchers that
By a
we know,
lot.
and it is indicative.
78, by the way.
Yeah, it's indicative of a guy who is a pitcher and not a thrower. And I do like those kind of guys. The problem is
Right?
next year he's going to be in Sacramento, which just scares the crap out of me. If they were sticking in Oakland, like JP Sears would be on a lot of my teams once again. He was on a
Same.
lot of my teams early this year before I dropped him, and now other people are getting goodness.
I was
But
in on him too, and also moved on because things weren't working, and that
yeah,
happens.
I don't think JP Sears is ever going to be a stud, but I think he's going to be like a long term useful guy in baseball and in
Right.
fantasy. I just think the next few years in Sacramento are going to be really really rough on him because he doesn't have the kind of stuff that puts people away. He needs to get outs in the outfield
And you
and
don't want the ball in play in
and
Sacramento.
yeah,
It's a minor
no.
league field, folks, and it's gonna be
It
balls hot.
it's
Like,
it's a minor league field in Sacramento is a really, really dry area.
ball be
Which
flying,
yeah, the
dude.
balls are gonna be flying. And so like I don't want JP Sears long term, but rest of the year, like I'm totally fine just riding this out.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. And again, same matchups. They both get Cincy this week, then Seattle, Detroit two-step, then a trip to the White Sox. They do break off in that final week. When I said that Beto gets a trip to the Cubs, Sears is in line to face his former team, the Yankees there. But is at home, so maybe by then, it'll be late. Maybe you're starting him because you kind of need to. I don't know. We can assess that in 3 weeks. But there you go. There's 10 pitchers that are absolutely surging right now. Our chat is even saying, do not draft
Yeah,
Oakland pitcher or Sacramento pitchers. The ball flies out here. Yeah, you're gonna want to be very careful. And you're gonna hear us talking about some like under the radar Oakland A's hitters next
hitters,
year.
yeah.
My JJ Bleday love. If you thought it was annoying when he was a Marlin, now he's actually good, y'all. I liked him
Yeah.
as a prospect when he sucked. Now he's actually pretty good, and he's going to Sacramento. I cannot wait to gush over JJ Bleday next year, but that'll be for another time. Justin, great talk here on these 10. Who's your absolute favorite? It's Schwelly, right?
Yeah, Schwellenbach, I don't think it's particularly close.
I didn't think so.
I do love Bryce Miller and Bowden Francis. And I mean I like a lot of these
You like
guys.
a lot
Like
of this group, but Schwelly's still the number one, and he's the
yeah,
guy you're going to be targeting
Schwellenbach
next
is
year.
yeah.
Okay,
Mhm.
I'm with that. By the way, I think Schwelly. I think the Spencers are my faves. I'm pretty big on Arrighetti as well. I've had a long fandom of Mania, so I'm just happy that he's come out of the malaise with San Francisco and he's pitching well. So I'm rooting for him.
My
And the two Seattle guys are great.
my hope is that Schwellenbach is kind of for next year will be this year's like Tanner Bybee, who is a guy that like I really really loved. I ended up with a lot of shares of, and other people were a little tepid on,
Right.
and has just been like a really Tanner Bybee has just been he's been an ace that nobody talks about.
And I'm gonna do the thing, okay? Because it pissed me off at the time. Remember when people were crying and carrying on about like his ERA being a little bit
Yeah,
high early on? And listen, I understand for a guy that on my second main, he was actually my ace because I waited on pitcher. But for most people, he was your second or third starter, and he had about a five-ish ERA through 8 starts. But if you had watched, I don't know, any of them. I'm not trying to be too much of an asshole here, just a little bit. But it's like if you were watching the starts and seeing the skills, you weren't that worried. He had played down to a few opponents, including Oakland, which, hey, turns out they're actually better than we thought. But he walked 5 against them in his opener. He did poorly against the White Sox, poorly against the Angels and Tigers. And I understand that that was frustrating because he was doing well against the good teams and poorly against the bad teams. And you're like, what is going on with Tanner Bybee? But you never should have taken him out of the lineup. And I
yeah,
was saying that at the time too, so this isn't just hindsight. And since the Detroit start where they got 4 innings, 4 runs off of him, he has a 2.86 ERA in 98 innings, Tanner
yeah,
Bybee. So, like, to your point, and you think Schwallenbach could be that kind of guy next year where he ascends to
yeah,
that soft ace, great number
yep.
two that not everyone is in love with, so you get a pretty fair price on him,
Yeah,
even though it will be high.
you're gonna draft him as a number 4, number 5, and he's gonna end up being a number 2 for you. Like
I would love
yeah,
that. I will say this. If he finishes September strong and they make the playoffs, he might end up being drafted as a number 2, though.
I'll take it. I
There,
still
there
take
is a
it.
world where he really raises
I
his
don't think
stock.
he
Not,
does.
I wouldn't be against
but
it though.
I wouldn't be against either, but I don't think so. We're getting so much A's love in the for A's offense love in the chat
I'm,
right
I'm with it.
now.
Yeah, Butler 40-40. Toro's going to hit 25 bombs. Henry Wilson says he's already done his first draft for next year, and he took both Rooker and Bleday. I'm absolutely there too. Could we get to the point where they get overrated because of the park? That's a good question there by Aaron Gifts, and he mentions Shea Bangalore is
Yeah,
another guy. Like, no, because the bias against Oakland. I
Yeah,
think there will be people that will be pounding the drum, and you will
yeah,
see some drafts where somebody really gets in on it. But I think the large scale fantasy community will still keep them down a bit
yep.
because they're Oakland. The Oakland stink is on them,
Mhm.
and until we see the performance, some people won't necessarily believe it. But
And I
I'm just
think
gonna look at
every one of those guys that was just mentioned in Rooker, Blade, Butler, and Langoliers all have warts that
right,
are going to, especially if you're, in NFBC, yes, maybe they're going to be bumped up more than you'll see on ESPN, Yahoo, CBS,
sure,
Fantrax. But like Blade's a platoon guy, right? Like he's been a guy who's been platooned in the past, right? Butler has these
Butler
massive hot
K's
streaks,
too
but
much.
yeah, but he also strikes out too much. He doesn't have good in zone contact skills. Langoliers is going to have like a 217 average or something like
Right.
that to finish the year, right?
Rooker technically
Like
doesn't have a flaw except age. People might just not believe in the late
one other
blooming
flaw
30-year-old.
that
What?
really affects people in the ESPNs, the Yahoos. He's going to be UT only. That
Great
people
call.
won't
Great
want.
call.
Like, I mean, think about where Ozuna was going this
You're
year and
dead
how big
right.
of a mistake that was. So
You're
I
dead
think
right. That will keep his price down.
I definitely think that they're going to be more expensive than they might have been if they were staying in Oakland, but I don't know that it's going to be prohibitively from
Cost
or
prohibitive.
prohibitive,
Yeah.
yeah, cost for you
I totally
drafting.
agree. I still think even with an elevation of some of these guys, if you're playing with some of the folks in our chat or ourselves, I still think they're going to be affordable. I might even get back in on Zach Geloff because his price is going to crater after he hit 202. Somebody mentioned Abraham Toro, and they were just being cheeky about it, but he did get
Mhm.
DFA'd. So I do feel like it's worth pointing out that you probably don't want Toro next year because
Yeah,
we don't know what team he'll be.
but there'll be another Toro
There'll be
brought
a
in, right?
Toro-esque player there, Daryl
If
Ernaiz.
if I'm a hitter trying to get a pillow contract, and I hope
Oh,
like Oakland's going to be
Sacktown,
the
baby.
place. Like, hey, go slum it for a little bit in Sacramento because
Right?
yeah, we do have someone in the chat being like, hey, like it's not going to be very comfortable for players. Oh, I don't know if you've seen the Oakland situation. It's not very comfortable for their players
That's
there,
the thing.
anyways.
For the
Like,
guys that are already part of Oakland, they're not going to necessarily see anything. The guys you're talking about, the pillow contract guy, might be like, okay, this kind of sucks here, but I'm going to hit bombs. Yo,
yeah.
just think about what happened with the Toronto season when they bounced around to a bunch of minor league stadiums before they finally went back to Rogers Center and the seasons that those guys put up. It's going to be akin to that. Now they don't have a Vlad, they don't have a Bichette or peak level Bichette guy, but they got good players. They do have some
Hmm.
good talented players. But anyway, we need to get going.
Yeah.
You got to get to work. But great talking with you about these pitchers. Thank you all so much for joining us. TBD on an episode tomorrow. Probably just back on Friday. But if we got time, we'll do a third episode or second of the week tomorrow. The Friday episode will be locked in for sure. I'll talk to you then. At least have a good one, Justin. Take care.
Take it easy.